You're listening to WRUU-LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul. You are listening to Murmurations by Kirsten Volness. Is it jazz? Is it classical? Is it pop? Who cares about what label we give it or what musical genre it is, because it is just wonderful music. You are listening to Evening Eclectic, and I'm Dave Lake, your host, for the next 2 hours of just that, music without labels, just great music and conversation. Enjoy. Tonight on Evening Eclectic, I am chatting with Abe Partridge. The first time I met Abe, it's got to be over 4 years ago now, when he was touring around the Southeast and made a stop here in Savannah and on Tybee Island at the Tybee Post Theater, and brought with him his personally released album, White Trash Lipstick. And then again, roughly a year later or so, just as he released his new album, Cotton Fields and Blood for Days, and right before the release actually was official through the Skate Mountain Records label, he was back on Tybee Island and we had a chance to chat again. And I had him on one of my other shows, Savannah Music, Local and Sustainable. And finally, we're back together after all these years. We're back together again on Zoom to talk about his new album, the live concert album from several clubs in England called Live in the UK, Agony is All Right. Welcome back to WRUU, Abe Partridge.
Thank you, Dave. It's an honor to be here with you, buddy.
And so it's been a while since you've been on my shows. And so let's go back, because you have a very, very unusual journey to become a musician. So let's go back and talk about some of those stages that you went through. And when they get the album, they'll hear the story again, but we can go into a little bit more detail than you generally do on the stage.
Yeah, I was born and raised here in Mobile, Alabama. I left when I was 18. I went to 4 different Bible colleges in pursuit of a theological education. I had a hard time staying enrolled, but I finally finished. Married the love of my life, who I'm still married to today. The day after I graduated, we ended up settling in Northwest Georgia and had babies. I took a church in Kentucky when I was 25 years old and started to pastor. And then whenever I was 27, through a gradual process, had come to a point in my life where it was no longer anything I was interested in doing. And so I quit the ministry. I moved back to Mobile, and devoid of any marketable skill, I joined the United States military. I'm still a reservist in the Air Force. I've been in about 15 years now. I went to the desert, and at the end of 2013, the beginning of 2014, I returned. Whenever I returned, I had started writing songs and painting back whenever I was a preacher in Kentucky, and I was going through that pretty agonizing process of deconstructing this entire theological belief system, that I had. So when I came back from the desert, I determined that I was going to start sharing my art with other people. So I started sharing the songs that I had written. As one thing led to another, I started playing to more people, and then I made a couple of records, and then my records got out there, Cotton Fields and Blood for Days. That one kind of got out there and really got me touring a lot. Started touring over in Europe. So I started in 2015, and in 2019, I left my job, and I've been out here doing it since March of 2019, just doing art and music full time now. So it's been a wild ride. Yeah.
Well, you had a good year at least for touring.
Yeah. Yeah. Had I been able to foresee the future, I probably wouldn't have quit my job in March of 2019. Fortunately, my fan base, which is not huge, but they are devoted, they've supported me through buying my art and listening to my music and supporting me that way. And we've been able to stay afloat.
Yeah, that's great. Because this has been a really hard time for artists.
Well, I guess it's unprecedented for at least those of us who are alive, right?
You mentioned touring the United
Yeah.
States, and even touring Europe. How did you get the
Yeah.
connections to tour in Europe?
When Cotton Fields and Blood for Days came out, we had a little bit of press make it over to the Netherlands, and it got a little bit of traction over that way. When it was released, it ended up placing on the Americana charts over there, at least in the Dutch charts. And I had an agency reach out to me and ask if I'd be interested in coming over the Netherlands and playing. And so in the fall of 2018, I went over and did a 2-week long tour of the Netherlands and Belgium. And when I was there, the last show I played, ended up playing in a town called Arnhem. Beautiful town. It was ravaged by the Nazis in World War II. So it's a little different than most of the other parts of the Netherlands because a lot of the buildings are newer. Anyway, I was playing this venue called Luxor Live over there, really great venue. And I was opening for an artist named Jared Dickerson, and he's from the United States as well. Well, he had an English piano player with him. And we ended up hanging out after the show. And the piano player was from England. Me and him just hit it off really well. He said, I would like you to come over to England and open my next tour for me. And I didn't really even know he was an artist. I just thought he was like a hired gun piano player kind of traveling with Jared. And so he got up to go use the bathroom. And when he did, I typed up his name in Google, and I found out he was like a proper English rock star, named David Ford. So I returned toward the tail end of 2019. I toured the United Kingdom with David Ford. I can't remember how many shows, somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 shows. We played from the bottom of Britain to the top, went over in Ireland and played from the bottom to the top of it as well. Well, this album that I'm releasing is some of the songs from those shows.
And so the new album, which I mentioned before, is called Live in the UK, Agony is All Right.
Yeah.
And this was just released on November 19th. This is a live album. And I have to tell you, when I saw that it was a live album, I had to have it because of the fact that I love live albums, because there's a way that you interact with the audience, particularly in a smaller club. Good as an album is, it just doesn't come across on an album. So why did you want to do a live album?
So the way that I've made my records in the past, I've gone to studios and I have laid down tracks and kind of built tracks around my records with different studio musicians and stuff. And then, I've also done the thing where you go in and go around several different microphones and you record it live right there with a full band. I've done it that way. But then, when I go on the road, it's primarily me and my guitar. And occasionally I'll tour with another instrumentalist. So, usually when I'm playing my live shows and when I play my songs, I play them either solo or with the aid of one or possibly two instrumentalists. So this live album, this is more of what people that enjoy my music, this is primarily the way that they enjoy it when they come see me at live shows. I'm not at the place right now where I can take a 5 or 6 piece band on the road and play out my songs like they are on the album. But, my songs are never built that way anyway. All my songs have been written me sitting alone on my guitar. Every one of them have started that way. And so when you're hearing them on this live record, you hear more what they sound like before we go to a studio, and more in keeping in the way that you would hear them if you come to one of my shows.
Tonight on Evening Eclectic, I am chatting with Abe Partridge. And what is so wonderful here is just that, because you're going to be hearing it the way that you'd be hearing it if they came to one of your shows. And more than that, it's that personal interaction that you have with the audience, because you have a wonderful personal interaction with the audience. Do you think that
Yeah,
communication with the audience comes from your fact that you once were a preacher?
probably. Yeah. That's something that's important to me. I view what I'm doing essentially as an act of communication and not in entertainment terms. You know, they call this the entertainment business, but I mean, I realize that there's an entertainment element to all of this. But with my songs, there's usually a message that I'm trying to convey, or there's a purpose in it. And also, when you're playing in front of a live crowd, it is an act of communication because it's not just me spouting off into a microphone. I mean, there's a lot of nonverbal communication that happens between the audience and yourself. And sometimes it even does become verbal. So, one of the things that I love about music is that one of the reasons I do what I do is to get up there, to play my songs for people, and to establish that relationship between the songwriter and the audience. And it's just a beautiful thing. I mean, during the pandemic, when so many people were doing live streams, I tried it a few times. We'd have like 80 or 100 people tune into my live stream, but it's just me in my garage or whatever. And I hated it. I hated it because that element that's so essential to performance for me was gone. You know, this Live in the UK album, there was no coronavirus back then. It reminds me of those days, those great, great times.
Now, the other thing I love about the fact that you're doing a live album is because of the fact that not only are you personally communicating with the audience, you are personally communicating with the audience
Yeah,
because your
yeah.
songs are very personal.
Yes.
Why did you sort of take that confessional route to writing?
It's kind of in the title to the record, that agony is all right. It's kind of like the reason I became a songwriter was not because I wanted to be a rock star. I started writing songs as a way to deal with the frustrations and the failure, my own personal failures, and trying to find peace in my own heart. That's where me becoming a songwriter derived from that. I was in Kentucky trying to do something that I no longer believed in anymore. I felt like I was stuck in a place that I would never be able to escape. And it was in that through songwriting, I came to terms with all that and eventually found the strength to reinvent myself. That being where my songs came from all these years later, I never write songs for other people. It's all very personal to me, I guess I should say. You talk about it being personal. Well, yeah, it's very personal. Therein lies why I kept it hid for all them years. I started writing in 2006, 2007, and I never sang them for a soul other than my wife and a few close friends until 2015. So about 8 years, I wrote songs before ever sharing them with people because they're personal, and it puts me in a place of vulnerability to present them. Because you don't want to put out some of your deepest thoughts and feelings out for public to criticize them. It's scary. It took me 8 years, and it took me going to war. But after 8 years and going to war, I finally found the courage to do it. At this point in my life, I'm real thankful that I did because it's changed my life for the better.
One of the things I like most about your songs is that they get to some deep truths, but often they're hilarious.
Yeah, well, that's on purpose, Dave. That's on purpose because something from the Bible, which I always thought was pretty profound, and I think it's missed by most people that would call themselves Christians today, is this thing about speaking the truth in love. And if you have something hard to say, sometimes it's best to put it in a way that it's maybe a bit ridiculous. Or there are several songs on that live record that would probably garner a chuckle, but inside them there's some pretty deep concepts and ideas that aren't always that easy to digest. And if you try to write a song about those kind of things without it, it would probably fall on deaf ears. When you say some hard things and you bring up some not easily digestible ideas and you candy coat them in some humor, I find it's, easier for people to listen to.
And like you say, your songs go quite a ways back. One of them, it's the title cut off of your first album, White
Yeah.
Trash Lipstick.
You are one of 1,000 people that have the White Trash Lipstick record. There was 1,000 CDs made of that, and they were only sold at shows early in my career. And they're not available on any kind of streaming platform or anything. So at a lot of my shows, my fan base is well aware of, and they usually request it. And so I play it, and I thought it would be good to put it on this record so it can have a proper release, to where somebody, they type up my name and White Trash Lipstick, it'll come up with this record here and they'll be able to hear the song. I was driving through Tennessee one time, East Tennessee, whenever I lived up there. I looked down, and this kind of like a little holler. There was this old dilapidated house and a very beautiful girl sitting on the front porch. That was just the image always stuck with me. That's when the idea for that song was born. And then everything else I just made up.
Tonight on Evening Eclectic, I am chatting with Abe Partridge. Let's listen to that very early song, and in fact, the title song from the first album, White Trash Lipstick. But this is the live version that is from the new album, live in the UK, Agony Is All Right. So let's listen to Abe Partridge and White Trash Lipstick from the live in the UK, Agony Is All Right album.
This is a song called White Trash Lipstick. Hope you like it. Well, I was headed up the country just a wasting away, man. This city life's a downer. I could use a vacation. My truck broke down in some remote location. Now I'm falling in love. And you were sitting on your front porch the first time I saw you. You wore a wrinkled t-shirt advertising marijuana. And that trailer park you lived in was like little Tijuana. But I'm falling in love, baby, with that white trash lipstick. It looks mighty fine on you. And oh, baby, I don't understand it, but I think that I'm falling for you. And that's all right. You came a-strutting up to me, said, let me look under your hood. And I could tell by your walk you wasn't no good. You didn't move the way that a young girl should. But I'm falling in love. You had a sheen on your face like you'd been cooking over fryers. Your feet were all tore up from walking through them briars. And that tattoo on your back of the Queen of Diamonds had me falling in love. baby, with that white trash lipstick, it looks a mighty fine on you. And oh baby, I don't understand it, but I think that I'm falling for you, and that's all right. And I couldn't help myself when I seen your lips were painted like a white trash masterpiece. See, I've been trying to live up to my family name. My daddy, he's a banker, he's the best in this trade. I know he's got a lot of money, but I won't never be his favorite, 'cause I'm falling in love. And my mama always told me the gospel truth, said don't smoke or drink or go with girls that do. I guess I'm going astray just a little too soon, 'cause I'm falling in love. Baby, with that white trash lipstick, it looks a mighty fine on you. And oh baby, I don't understand it, but I think that I'm falling for you, and that's all right. And I could tell that you didn't have the greatest of schooling, and your blonde hair dye wasn't doing no fooling, but you were swinging that ratchet like you knew what you was doing, and I'm a-falling in love. And then you slammed my hood, said turn it over now. You were covered up in grease, but I sure didn't care. I said, baby, hop in my truck and let's get out of here, because I'm falling in love.
So you've been listening to Abe Partridge singing White Trash Lipstick. And this is from the Live in the UK Agony's All Right album. Eventually, I'm going to work one in from the White Trash Lipstick just to show the fans my street cred when it comes to Abe Partridge.
Well, let me tell you, Dave, I mean, I met you, that tour that I was on in Savannah that time, I would say that was right at one of the very first tours that I did that was significantly away from Mobile. So yeah, you've been around since the inception, man. Street cred.
Well, that's part of the creativity, is that you can put a lot into it based upon a simple premise.
Yeah. People get a chuckle out of it, laugh, and I can give them something heavy like undisclosed location, and it'll give them time to drop a tear or two.
So after I quit preaching, I joined the United States military on account that I didn't have no marketable skill. And I spent 2013 and 14 in a place that whenever we went there, they told us we couldn't tell people where we were going. We had to tell them we were going to an undisclosed location in Southwest Asia. And so when I was over there, I ended up writing this song called The Undisclosed Location in Southwest Asia, Killing Floor Blues. And it's about dealing with the moral and spiritual consequences of participating in the most horrible thing on the face of the earth. I hope you like it. Well, I'm a uniform nothing in this nowhere land. this dry desert heat, in this dry desert sand. And the camel in the distance, Lord, he looks so free. As the wind blows the dust from his hide, in between my clenched teeth, my clenched teeth, my clenched teeth. And the bombs, they just keep a-falling from them undertakers in the sky. And I think about my babies. When I left them, they were crying. And I know I will never believe everything that I believed before. 'Cause I can't even tell the difference between a prison and this war. A prison and this war. Prison in this war. Because there might have been a time when it was right to say God bless you, but I'm afraid that time is no more. And there might have been a time when it was right for us to ask forgiveness, but the killers ain't the ones praying. When we were out on the killing floor, and so I'll just lace up my boots like I did the last 100 days. The sting of the Arabian sun bearing down upon my face. 'Cause I done stared this devil down, and I'm starting to realize that the good guys and the bad guys, we ain't so easily defined. No, we ain't so easily defined. No, we ain't so easily defined. No, we ain't so easily defined. We ain't so easily defined.
And the other thing great about this album is it's a show. You
Yeah.
listen to it and it's a show.
Yeah, it's
And
just like you're at a show. Yep.
that's fabulous. I mean, everybody will do live albums, but they'll do cuts from shows.
Right.
And this is pretty much, it sounds like a whole show. And then there are a couple tracks that are added to the end from other shows.
The show in London, we played Bush Hall in London, which is, I mean, the most gorgeous old, I believe it was a early 19th century dance hall, if I'm not mistaken. But it's beautiful. I mean, the ceilings were probably 50 or 60 foot. I mean, it was huge chandeliers and everything. There was probably about 400 or 500 people. I believe the first 5 or 6 tracks were all from the London show. And then, to kind of fill it out, we put in some tracks from some of the other sets. But my friend David Ford, who I was on tour with, his sound man that was on tour with us, he recorded everything. And then David, he went through all the recordings and he handpicked all of these songs, and he's the one who produced the whole thing for me. So yeah, the selections were made by David, but I think he did a stupendous job. So
Yeah, because they encompass your full oeuvre.
yeah.
Should you try to include stuff from the White Trash Lipstick album, and then try to get some stuff from the Cotton Fields and Blood for Days album in your sets, so that, and maybe a new
I
song
do.
or two?
Dave, I never write a set list. So a lot of it, like when you come to one of my shows, a lot of it, I mean, I say to my shame, probably, I guess. I don't know. It's worked for me, but it just depends on what kind of mood I'm in, really. And but on a good night, I do try to include a little bit of everything and new stuff, as well as a mixture of a lot of the older things that I've written. And there's a couple of songs, White Trash Lipstick and Colors, that get played at probably nearly every show, because those are ones that I find people connect to pretty frequently. See, I have written enough funny songs where people could take me as a stand-up or something. Then I've written enough sad songs where people could take me as sad and depressed. So I try to mix everything in there to kind of get both extremes and a lot of stuff in the middle when I play. And I think that's what you hear on the Live in the UK record.
This is WRUU-LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul.
What does it mean when we say that WRUU is a community radio station? It doesn't just mean that we invite the community to create programming. And it doesn't just mean that we are a voice for the community. It also means that we are counting on the community to keep us going. And you are the community. Almost all of our modest budget comes from small annual or monthly donations from listeners like you. You get to enjoy our community-focused programming because many others have stepped forward to do their part. Now do your part by joining our community of listener donors. Go to WRUU.org right now and make a one-time or monthly donation. And thank you for supporting Savannah's community radio station, 107.5 FM.
This portion of WRUU's programming is brought to you by listeners like you and by the 2021-2022 American Traditions Vocal Collection series of concerts, and by the 2022 American Traditions Vocal Competition. Singer-songwriter and ATC Gold medalist Nicole Zaritis will perform on February 11th at 7:30 p.m. at the Skidaway Island United Methodist Church as part of the American Traditions Vocal Collection of Concerts. More information about this and other concerts in the series and tickets can be found at www.atcsavannah.org.
Disasters don't stop even during a pandemic. The Red Cross is here to help when disasters strike. They respond to a disaster every 8 minutes. They help people to prepare for disasters, and they help prevent disasters such as home fires. The Red Cross saves lives by providing blood. More information about Red Cross services and donating blood can be found at www.redcross.org.
Beginning on November 17th and running through mid-January, Location Gallery at the corner of Liberty and Bull Streets is holding a 300 and under sale with an emphasis on holiday shopping. All purchases during this period will benefit WRUU. Gallery hours are 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. weekdays and 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Saturdays. You can also find and shop at Location Gallery online at www.locationgallery.com.
Welcome back to Evening Eclectic. I'm your host, Dave Lake.
Tonight on Evening Eclectic, I am chatting with Abe Partridge. The first time I met Abe, it's got to be over 4 years ago now, when he was touring around the Southeast and made a stop here in Savannah and on Tybee Island at the Tybee Post Theater. And finally, we're back together after all these years to talk about his new album, the live concert album from several clubs in England called Live in the UK, Agony is All Right. Well, that's something I've noticed early on in your career. Again, The only thing you had out with White Trash Lipstick album. And so there are relatively few set of songs that you were drawing from. And again, even in a show like that, even at a very early stage like that, you had this wonderful combination of the humorous and the serious.
Yeah. Well, that's my whole life, Dave. I guess that's my personality. I read about theology and economics, then I turn on King of the Hill. So I guess it's me. I'll talk to you about the Atlanta Braves, or I will talk to you about, I don't know, serpent handling or something.
You mentioned Colors.
Yeah.
And Colors is probably, I guess, your most popular song.
Yeah, I mean, according to streaming numbers, it's my most streamed song. And I mean, I'll go to shows a lot of times and that's what people want to hear. I'm thankful for it, But yeah, it's probably been my most requested song. Yeah.
And I was listening to your album and I started cracking up, and my wife said, I thought you were listening to music. I said, oh, but there's pattern in between. And he just said, yeah, that's been streamed 50, 60,000 times. And I've made tens of dollars from it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's the way I like to introduce that one. I always like to point that out because, change starts with awareness. So people need to be made aware of how horribly wrong songwriters, artists are being done in this day and age. But I mean, I've not made it my plight in life to single-handedly wage a war against them. This record is going to be made available on all the streaming platforms. It's the nature of the current beast. Yeah, I do like to mention that.
Well, and as I always say, streaming is a great way to hear it for the first time.
Absolutely.
But you need to get it in your hands.
Yeah. I'm guilty of it too. I mean, I listen to stuff on streaming services all the time, but if you write a record and it blows me away, if there's a way for me to physically buy it, whether it's on CD or vinyl, I mean, I've got thousands of them in my house here. I mean, think about it like this. If you hear a record you like and you purchase a $10 or $12 CD, that would be akin to probably hundreds of thousands, tens or hundreds of thousands of streams, which are extremely difficult to come by. So I've never played the whole game. I never tried to get on playlists. I've never done any of that. I've kind of run my career in the way that somebody would have done prior to all of those things existing. And I'm not suggesting that any other artists do that, but those things just make me nauseous, man. And I'm able to go out, I meet people like you. I just try to do my best, play my songs, find my people. My songs aren't going to connect with everybody. I know that. I would say that my songs aren't even going to connect with most people. However, there are some people that connect with what I do artistically and they love it. And so what I've been trying to do since the end of 2015, my goal has been to go out and find as many people that connect and understand and appreciate my art as I possibly can. And that's how I've made a career out of it. Worrying about where I am on a streaming list, there's nothing that bores me more.
Tonight on Evening Eclectic, I am chatting with Abe Partridge. And so let's listen to Colors. And again, this is Colors. And this is from the Live in the UK, Agony Is All Right album by my guest tonight, Abe Partridge.
I started writing songs when I was losing my mind, trying to figure out how to be a preacher and tell people things I was losing my ability to believe in. And then, but I was scared to death to sing them for anybody. And then when I went to the desert back in 2013, I told God if he'd let me come home. I realized when I was over there that all I'd ever done was bring negativity and violence into the world. And I told God if he'd let me come home, I'd try to bring a little beauty into it. And I played my first show about 4 years ago, 4 years and 4 days ago. And now here I am. In case you didn't know, this is what they call a young man's game. But it's surreal. And I can't tell you how excited I am to play for you guys and how in debt I am. David, where's David at? Come on, buddy, let's play some music. And this is a song I wrote called Colors. It's the most popular song that I ever wrote. It's been streamed on Spotify 50,000 times. It's made me tens of dollars. And David's going to join me on my last song here. Thank you all. Been a great audience. This is a song called Colors. I hope you like it. Well, like a silver roan choir, the sun rose high through the blues. Set the pink sky on fire as I burn with desire and love with you. The back porch squeaked underneath our feet as we danced in this golden hue. And the oranges of autumn were shimmering from underneath the dew. Colors are all that matter when you're already outside the lines. And what we thought was just scribbles had become a pretty picture in this pale gray night. Pretty shady, and we didn't have a history of doing right. It didn't happen like we planned it, and folks won't understand it, but our love, it ain't black and white. as the blood moon shined in dying reds. And the green in your eyes was accented by your lavender dress. You hit a long blank stare behind your purple mascara as I so pitifully confessed. I was a 3-time loser with a black cloud that followed. I was a formerly handsome mess. And like an evening primrose and midnight yellow bloom, you said to me, I ain't never met a man with no obvious plan and such honesty. And I've been broke too, and money reds and heart blues, and I've seen the darkest valley. You may have lost 3 times, but you won't here tonight. So let's paint ourselves lucky. Colors are all that matter when you're already outside the lines. And what we thought was just scribbles have become a pretty picture in this pale gray night. And our past was pretty shady, we didn't have a history of doing right. It didn't happen like we planned it, and folks won't understand it. But our love, it ain't black and white.
So we've been listening to Colors, and this is from the Live in the UK Agony Is All Right album. Tonight on Evening Eclectic, I am chatting with Abe Partridge. Why do you think Colors is so popular?
Well, the chorus says that it didn't happen like we planned it and folks won't understand it, but our love ain't black and white. And I feel like that's the kind of thing that most people that have found love, they can connect with in some way, So it's a love song, and it's about finding love outside of most perfect circumstances, which I think in our day and time is where most people find love. And I can't tell you how many people have came up to me and told me that was their song. They're a couple, and that's their song. I actually had one of the most incredible things happen during the middle of the coronavirus, probably a couple years ago. I can't even remember where they live. I believe it was in Ohio or something, but they wrote me and said, this is mine and my husband's song, and we really appreciate when we wondered if we could get you to send the lyrics to us. I was like, absolutely. And so I did. And then I think it was toward the beginning of the pandemic. I had a message from the lady again, and she said that her husband had passed and they wanted to use those lyrics in his funeral handout. And I said, of course. But it's stuff like that. When you write a song, so the fact that people may have streamed it 50 or 60, that doesn't mean anything to me. The fact that it was so impactful in this couple's life that, I think I've met them before at a show, but I don't remember meeting them. It's one of the hundreds of shows I've played. But knowing that song made that type of an impact in a man and a woman's life, you just can't place a value on it. And you think about the power of songs are really powerful. When I quit preaching, a lot of people told me it was like I was stepping down. But when you hear stuff like that, it makes you realize just how impactful a song can be.
Tonight on Evening Eclectic, I am chatting with Abe Partridge. Now, when you get to my favorite songs, they tend to be the more politically oriented songs.
Yeah.
I love them all. And one is, if you pick my favorite songs, and both appear on this album, which is fantastic. That means you play them a lot, which is good.
Yeah, I do.
And so one of them is, one is related to the music business. And one of them is related to your time in Qatar.
Yes.
And so when you were in Qatar in the Air Force, of course, you couldn't tell anybody you were in Qatar because you were in an undisclosed location.
Yeah.
And so one of my favorites is, you've guessed it, the undisclosed location in Southwest Asia, Killing Floor Blues.
Yes.
So did you write that while you were there?
Yes, I did. We went over there. We flew in on a C-130 and we landed. And when they lowered the back ramp of that C-130, it felt like somebody took a hot air dryer, like a hair dryer, and put it on its hot setting, and then held sand in their hand and placed it in front of the dryer and then just blew it on you. And no matter which way you angled yourself, that's what it felt like. And I did not want to get off that plane. Now, I didn't have that feeling until then. I was over there and I didn't really have that feeling until then. I was like, man, I just want to go home. You realize pretty quick that the only way to go home is to ride your time out. And so it was 6 months of that kind of living. Somebody might listen to this and say, well, he was in the Air Force, and you are right. I joined the Air Force for a reason. I wanted to learn a skill. I wasn't a gun toter. I mean, we had them issued to us. And so, people's military experiences have been different based upon their career. But, all I can speak from is my own experience. And it was a transformative experience for me. The person that went there didn't come home. I came home with a new and a different perspective. And that perspective drastically changed many of the things that I believed about patriotism and God and country and humanity and all sorts of things. And it created this burning desire to get back home and try to make the world a more beautiful place, which has been my endeavor since late 2015. So, looking back on it now, do I say I regret it? Well, no. Can I say I regret being a preacher? No, because they made me who I am today. And I'm not upset about it. But yeah, I did write that song in the desert. I wrote it in a 10 by 10 room in a dilapidated trailer that had black mold all in it, where I lived with a good buddy of mine, and we lived in a 10 by 10 room, and I had the bottom bunk and he had the top. And I took a guitar over there with me, and I wrote that song when I was over there. I performed it to him and maybe a couple of people when I came home, like my wife, never knowing that, all these years later, I'd be playing it in London of all places. That's funny. Yeah, so the universe works sometimes.
So you came back from your experience there in the Middle East
Yes.
with, as we can tell from this song, enhanced songwriting chops. But
Yeah.
what other skills did you bring back from the Air Force?
I learned a job skill. I'm an avionics technician, and I'm still a reservist. That's how I provide insurance for my family, which, in America, there's really not a good way for an artist to provide insurance for his family outside of being indebted to some corporation or the government in some form. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm been in the reserves for 15 years or so. But in the meantime, it taught me how to work with aircraft electronics. And after I did my active duty time, I was able to get a job where I could actually make enough money to sustain a livelihood, at least in South Alabama. Yeah. And, in the long run, what else did it teach me? Like patience and how to deal with perseverance, because there's already obstacles, but then the Air Force makes sure that they provide you a lot more obstacles as well. I mean, this music business is hard, Dave, and if you don't have perseverance, you ain't gonna make it, buddy. It ain't the most talented that always makes it. You got to have talent, believe me. You have got to have talent, but you've also got to have determination and perseverance and patience. You got to have all those things. Not just the music business. I mean, I'm an artist. I create art too. It's the same way. Some people think, well, look what I painted. Why am I not in the New York Museum of Art? Well, it takes a little bit more than just being able to create. You got to be able to create and then have the discipline that it requires to go out and present it to people. The Air Force probably helped me with all that. I will tell you this, I'm a much more disciplined man this side of having joined the military than I was before. Do you have to join the Air Force to have those things? No, absolutely not. But did it help me? Yeah, it did. Before the Air Force, I made minimum wage. I was preaching. I had a degree in theology, but that don't do nothing in an HR department anywhere. So, I would struggle making minimum wage for years. And then I, gradually worked my way to making about $10, $12 an hour. And that's all I could do until I came out of the Air Force. And then I had some actual job skills. And then, I got up there where I was making a little bit more money and could pay rent and have a family and feed my children without government aid and stuff. So with a lot of my life, I'm conflicted, because did it help me? Yes. But I would like my children to be in a place where they didn't need it. But I certainly needed it.
You mentioned a couple times now that you're involved in art as well as music. Are you involved in the creation of your album covers?
Oh, yeah. I made that record cover. Yeah. That was a piece I made that was 12 inches by 12 inches in real life. If you purchase the LP, it'll be a true to scale piece of art. But yeah, that's it. Now, I didn't do Cotton Fields and Blood for Days. That was a friend of mine by the name of Chris Taylor. And then White Trash Lipstick, I created that. I started writing songs and painting about the same time, 2006, 2008, during that time frame. I started playing my songs in the end of 2015, but it wasn't until February of 2018 that I started showing the artwork that I'd been creating. So I sat on my artwork a little bit longer than I did my songs. Whenever I put out Cotton Fields and Blood for Days, I wasn't publicly showing my work at that time. From this point on, I think all of my records will have my own art on them.
This is WRUU-LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul.
Tonight on Evening Eclectic, I am chatting with Abe Partridge. The first time I met Abe, it's got to be over 4 years ago now, when he was touring around the Southeast and made a stop here in Savannah and on Tybee Island at the Tybee Post Theater. And finally, we're back together after all these years to talk about his new album, the live concert album from several clubs in England called Live in the UK, Agony is All Right. Well, and as I mentioned, the second of my favorites. And actually, now that I'm saying these things, I'm thinking these go back to the White Trash Lipstick album. Honestly,
Yeah.
I do love Cotton Fields and Blood for Days.
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
want to make that very clear. We'll probably get
Yeah,
to some
yeah,
of those
yeah.
songs too. But another song that you sang on your tour, and is actually from that Live in London section, is also one of my favorites. And that's No Teacher Blues, because it really
Yeah.
speaks to the industry.
So I come from this little place on the very bottom of a state called Alabama called Mobile. I left Mobile when I was 18 years old to get a theological education, and I started preaching, and when I was 25 years old, I started pastoring a Baptist church in the mountains of Kentucky. And then whenever I was 27 years old, I lost my mind. I started writing songs. And then whenever I was 35 years old, I started a rock and roll band. And this is a song I wrote about it. I hope you like it. It's called the No Teacher Blues. Well, I bought me a guitar at the corner pawn shop. I played Guitar Hero. Now I really wanna rock. I bought me a music book I couldn't even read. Man, I'm gonna have to find someone to teach me. So I'm going to the city where the rock and rollers live. I gassed up my truckie and down the road I went. To Seattle to find the ghost of Kurt Cobain and learn to play some grunge guitar like Alice in Chains. But all I found were hipsters with their lumberjack beards and their trendy coffee shops and their fancy gelled up hair. So I asked this homeless dude, where's the underground scene? He said, punk is dead and it ain't had no recovery. And so I figured I should try my hand at old school R&B. Maybe Detroit City is where that I should be. I could grow a white boy afro and learn some funky moves and get some black girls behind me singing shoo bop shoo woo. But Motown left there years ago and there was no R&B. Well, I guess Detroit City just wasn't for me. San Francisco just to find my hippie soul. I went to Hayden-Asbury where all the hippies go. I walked around barefooted, I put flowers in my hair, and I took a trip on LSD, but I didn't get nowhere. To this mystic Maharishi said you gotta find yourself. So I packed up my truck and I headed back south. My mama was the biggest fan, so I was raised on Elvis, Surely I could find some rockabilly pickers down in Memphis, 'cause they had Johnny Cash and Carl Perkins. But now the Sun Studio is just a museum. That kind of music don't sell many records anymore. Well, I guess rockabilly, it ain't a big deal no more. And so I figured I should get back to the home of the blues. The Mississippi Delta was the best that I could do. I went to the crossroads of Robert Johnson fame, and I waited there to midnight, and I called the devil's name. And I guess it is ridiculous, but I waited there for hours. The sun came up and I still had no rock and roll powers. So then I headed up to Nashville to become a country star, and I seen $1,500 boots and fancy guitars played by GQ models and centerfold dolls. Man, what they're calling country, it ain't country at all. It's just a cookie cutter product of the crooked industry. And I don't know about you, brother, but it just wasn't for me. And well, maybe punk is dead, maybe the hippies are through, and R&B and rockabilly have done all that they can do. And maybe the devil ain't still teaching the blues, and Nashville's been taken by these business suits. I'll just play it like I feel it, let it come from my soul, 'cause you don't need no teacher to rock and roll. I'll just play it like I feel it, let it come from my soul, 'cause you don't need no teacher to rock and roll. Thank y'all. Y'all like to clap a lot. I've noticed, this is my sixth show over here, and y'all clap way longer than Americans clap. Most Americans are just like, next song, please. God bless you for it. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's about the industry, but I think a lot of people try to fit in music. And I'm not casting stones, but there's so many acts that feel it's like they have their stage get up and then they're somebody different elsewhere. They have this persona that they entertain behind, and then off stage they're totally different. And look, like I said, I'm not casting stones. That just ain't for me. You know, I like realness and authenticity in the kind of art that I consume. That whole song's kind of about trying to fit into that box and finding that, hey, I'm not that guy. I'm just me. I didn't ask to be born me. I didn't choose to be me. I just came out me. And so it's about me finding how to do what I do that comes natural to me, and make art in the way that I believe comes naturally to me. That, yeah. And then the last verse or two is absolutely a stab at the industry, because what I just told you is the complete opposite that what the industry wants out of folks. You know, I know that what I do is kind of relegated to a niche kind of thing, and maybe a little bit of obscurity, but hey, man, I'm proud of what I've made, though. When I go to bed at night, I'm happy of the art I've made. And that means more to me than trying to fit into some category or having a certain look or a certain sound or whatever.
Well, and I think that's one thing that really generates a very loyal fan base is because every song I listen to, I think I know Abe Partridge a little better.
Thank you for saying that. I've never heard anybody say it like that, but that's absolutely where I'm coming from in my art. I want everything to be from my gut. Dave, I've written hundreds of songs, hundreds. A bunch of the stuff I write, it don't feel that way. I whittle on them and whittle on them and whittle on them. Sometimes they become stuff that I play out, and sometimes they don't, because I want every song to have that unmistakable authenticity to where people know that it's real. Whether they like it or whether they don't like it, they know that it's real. That's what's my primary concern.
Tonight on Evening Eclectic, I am chatting with Abe Partridge. Well, actually, I'm going to go back a step from something I just said.
Okay.
And that is, we played Colors, and Colors is off of the Cotton Fields and Blood for Days, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
I've at least got one song off that album. So
there you go. Yeah.
I'm safe.
Yeah.
I haven't offended all the people who love that album.
No. Let me tell you, a lot of thinking with my manager and my publicist on this record was this was a way to kind of put out some of those songs from White Trash Lipstick, kind of get them songs onto the streaming platforms and stuff like that, where they can get more traction. And because right now, you know, if you were a fan of No Teacher Blues or Undisclosed Location, there might be another one on that record, I can't remember. But if you're a fan of those songs, which are two of my more, you know, I do those at a lot of shows, not every show, but at a lot of shows, there's really no way for you to hear that outside of going directly to my website. That's it. Like, if you don't go to my website, you'll never hear those songs at all. And I'd like to get those songs out there in a way that people can get them without re-releasing White Trash Lipstick at this point.
It's interesting. You know, this album is you with an acoustic guitar playing solo.
Yes.
And you did mention that you have traveled with individuals. In fact, I've seen you with both. One show you were traveling alone, and then one show you're actually traveling with a cellist, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, a great cello player named Courtney Blackwell that traveled with me for about a year, a little over a year maybe. We've done a number of shows together. She's on my records. If you listen to my Cotton Fields, she's on that one.
Now, let's talk a little bit about being in Europe compared to being in the United States. Let's briefly go through, you know, one of your gigs here in the United States and the interaction you have with the audience. And let's compare that to the interaction you have with the audience in a country whose primary language is not English. And that's Belgium or Netherlands.
It's a really interesting thing. And I've done 2 Dutch tours with the Netherlands and Belgium, and I've done the 1 UK tour. And I didn't know this when I went, but you know, I'd only been out of the country with the military. I had never been out of the country before playing music. In fact, I'd never been north of Kentucky or west of Texas before I started playing music, other than with the Air Force, which you don't really see anything anyway when you go with the Air Force. But when I went to the Netherlands the first time, being around the Dutch folks, they're very fluent in English, right? But their brains operate in Dutch. This is me theorizing now. I'm not speaking for all Dutch people. This is an observation I've made, and it may be totally wrong. But I believe that whenever I converse with them, they have to interpret it and then think about it in Dutch and then reinterpret it back to English and tell me. And I don't speak anything but English, so maybe that's all wrong. But what I've done is I lower the tempo in my performance. I slow down my songs when I'm in the Netherlands on purpose because, I mean, let's face it, if you can't understand my lyrics, then you're not really going to get what I'm doing. My voice probably isn't the most pleasant to listen to. I'm not a great guitarist. I realize my weaknesses and my strengths, and my strength is lyrics. So when I'm in the Netherlands and in Belgium, I do my best to make sure that I play in a way that they can get the lyrics. And, some of my stuff is really wordy. It is very important for them to hear all the words. When I was in the United Kingdom, I didn't do that. There's a bit of a novelty about my performance when I'm over there. I feel like I'm a rarity. That's not in America. When I play in America, I'm just some other dude with a guitar. Though I may have some things that differentiate me from others that are doing it, you're just another Alabama guy with an acoustic guitar, writes songs. And when I'm in the Netherlands, I'm a rarity walking around there, especially when you go to some of them smaller towns. I mean, you go play a show in a small venue in a smaller town in Belgium or the Netherlands or something. I think people, because of the fact that you're an oddball, people are more curious. They treat you more curiously than somebody would maybe in Savannah. Same way in England too. You hear my accent. I was born and raised in Mobile, and I lived in the Appalachians for 9 years of my life. Of course, they talk funny to me, and I talk funny to them. And I spent many nights in bars trying to understand what them Scottish people were saying. And I'm sure they just probably understand what I was saying, but we had a good time anyway.
Well, even in England, I mean, the old line is that the English and the Americans are two people separated by a common language.
Yeah.
And so how much do you think they understood a lot of the references that you make in your songs? Because your songs are very American.
Yeah, they are. And I realize that, for instance, I sing about Alabama astronauts. It's like a song that I sing about an alien invasion in a trailer park. It's just one of those little goofy songs that I wrote. And I make references to Lewis and Clark, and I make references to Paul Revere. So I make references to Paul Revere and Lewis and Clark, and I played that song exactly one time when I was in the United Kingdom, and I played it. I remember where I played it. I played it in Wales. Beautiful venue, but I played it in Wales, and I remember looking at folks, and they didn't have any idea. I don't think they got the reference, and I was like, okay, these are American references. And, like Paul Revere, I mean, that was like in a war against their country. So maybe they don't know, they're not very well versed on something that every American knows about. And I was like, I'm not singing that song anymore over here. But some of the other things, the 403rd Freakout talks about Lennon and McCartney. So they were all about that. They certainly understood that reference. These are things that I would have never considered when I wrote the songs, or even when I went over there. Yeah, what you just said, I kind of learned the hard way.
Well, and that brings up a number which I don't think is on your other albums. And there are a couple songs that are on this album that you do that aren't on the other albums, which are a treat for those who can remember the song from your live shows, or it's added bonus for this, both the live performances of songs they're familiar with, but a new song. Wow. And 403rd Freakout is, I believe, one of those songs that's not on any other album.
All right, this next song is where I'm going to lose half of you, and I know it is all right. It's a song I wrote in about 20 minutes, and it took me 6 months to learn it. It's called Abe Partridge's 403rd Freakout. I hope you like it. Well, sometimes I think we're already dead, or this trap that I call time is just some inception-like dream state I'm in as I lay dying. I think maybe we never existed at all, or just some five-sense hallucination, or just the mirror image of a higher reality beyond our comprehension. And I lie awake at night, and I can't keep my mind from wondering about what it all means, that I have the ability to wonder what it all means. Do you know that nobody in this whole wide world can give you the definition of consciousness that doesn't venture off into religion or some kind of absurdist pseudoscience? And since I started listening to both sides without caring on to which side I fell, well, I found out that there were more than two sides, if you really want to know a subject well, which only led me to more heartbreak as I thought about all the fights that have been started by two sides, and neither one of them were truly wrong or right. And then I considered the brutality that I witness every day, and how numb to the sight of human suffering I've become in my middle age. Now all the fascists and the commies are spewing out their dogmas and taking over the conversation. Any voice that's devoid of an agenda has been removed from consideration. And I started thinking about the weapons of mass destruction, biological, chemical, and nukes, and that we could have them all fired from the push of a button of an orange presidential buffoon. And so I started reading up on how to survive a nuclear apocalypse, and after my research I concluded I didn't even want to survive to live in a world like that. So even if I try to be positive and convince myself that someday we might actually have peace, well, it's then that I realize in like a billion years or something our planet's gonna cease to be, cause the sun has gravity too, you know, and we're being pulled in as we orbit. If we don't find a way to destroy ourselves, then the sun's gonna do it for us. And so, la 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 la, la 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 la, turn off your mind. La 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 la, la 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 la, turn off your mind. La 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 la, la 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 la, turn off your mind. Because an active mind is a devil's playground. The devil's playground. Well, then my mind turned to the scientists, explorers, and the greatest amongst us all, who gave their lives to learning and research and made great discoveries about the world. Then it occurred to me that all truth exists long before some learned man makes it known. I mean, if you think about it, E don't equal MC squared just because Einstein said it was so. And now considering this, science kind of seems like a waste. I'm going to devote myself to art. At least an artist creates something of value, a unique representation of his heart. But then I looked around at this plastic world, and their frowning faces and their disdain for beauty, and all these poor starving artists dwelling at the fringes of a cold society. But you know that we would not have Fur Elise if it were not for this individual named Beethoven. And we would certainly not have the White Album if Paul McCartney never met John Lennon. And I said, well, maybe that's my problem. I miss my Lennon. Somehow that chance done passed me by. And that's the reason I'm standing here singing this stupid song and losing my freaking mind. And then even this stranger thought my tortured mind began to ponder. Lord, I wonder what if Einstein would have met McCartney first while John Lennon was studying the great wonders. I ain't saying it would have been the Beatles, man, but it would have been interesting to see what they put out. Because I know that Einstein had some pretty cool hair, but I wonder if he could twist and shout. And maybe if Einstein had been singing oh blah dee, oh blah da, instead of drafting the letter to Roosevelt that paved the way for a nuclear bomb, then a little boy from Nagasaki could have married a pretty young girl from Hiroshima. They could have sang oh blah dee blah da together and taught their children songs by the Beatles. And I I can't imagine that the guy that wrote Imagine would have been any use in a science lab, lest that lab had the sole purpose of giving world peace a chance. So we gotta give Lennon to science and Einstein to McCartney. We gotta find a way to get back in time. But then I realized if we ever build a time machine, it'll be based on the scientific work of Albert Einstein. So la 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 la, la 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 la, turn off your mind. La 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 la, la 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 la, turn off your mind. La 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 la, la 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 la, turn off your mind. Because an active mind is the devil's playground. The devil's playground.
It's been a staple at my shows for 2.5 years. I was going to release a record in the middle of 2020 that, for obvious reasons, was canned, and it was going to be on it.
And just to make it very clear, I'm in the half that love it.
Yeah. I said half. I'm gonna lose half of y'all here. Yeah. I always try to warn people about that one because they got to be prepped to know that this is a very wordy song, and you got to listen hard for that one to make sense.
And I love the phrase that you say about this, and that is, it took 10 minutes to write and 6 months to learn it.
And that's the gospel truth too. I wrote that song in a fit. At least I wrote the sketch of that whole thing in a fit. Then I went back and had to make a lot of it rhyme. And then I was like, how am I ever going to perform this live? There's no way. Then I remember, like, well, there's rappers that rap. Some of those things are incredibly wordy. I was like, yeah, if they can do it, I can do it. So I sat down with a guitar and I worked for months trying to memorize all that. But I finally did.
And there is a lot there.
There's a lot there, yeah.
But as you mentioned, it's not all American. And so you go to issues much broader than the American scene. It reflects really on us here in America, but also reflects on a lot of different things and brings up issues I never even thought were issues. I never thought of Paul McCartney and Albert Einstein working together on a song.
Yeah. Well, that goes back to that old nuclear thing. And it's like, man, you start thinking about nukes and everything, and you're like, wow, this is a serious problem. And you think, well, the only way that this could have ever been stopped would have been to get in a time machine. But then you realize that if you were to get in a time machine, the theoretical principles that would be behind that time machine came from the actual person that wrote this letter that began the entire nuclear program. So, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And I mean, it's like what we were talking about earlier. It's a way to put candy shell around something that, is pretty tough to even talk about, contemplate.
You talk about becoming a survivalist. And then you're saying, after I thought about it a while, the world would not be a place I'd want to live in. So why would I do that?
Yeah. And this was real. I actually did that. I started trying to figure out what it would be like. I started reading different articles about, nuclear bombs, and especially, the kind that went off in Hiroshima and Nagasaki was like early generations of them. They're so much more horrifying now. And then you're like, wait a minute, death would be preferable. If those things go off, the best possible scenario for you and me would be right in the middle of the of the explosion. You'd just be vaporized. You'd never even know it, because having the unfortunate scenario to have to try to survive in that world would be even worse. That's why the chorus just says, La 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 la, turn off your mind. And at its core, really, Dave, it's just about trying to happily live, because we could talk about nuclear arms and all sorts of things. There's nothing me and you can do about it, brother. What we got to try to do is find a way to just live our lives in a way that we can be peaceful and content and joyful, and then try to help other people find that same peacefulness. And that's really what that's about. What's that prayer that they say in AA meetings? Like, give me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. That 403rd freak out is that AA prayer, just put in a different form, I guess.
This is WRUU-LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul.
Do you own a small business? Want to get your message out to a dedicated, loyal, and active audience? Then make WRUU part of your company's marketing strategy. Our listeners aren't just passively listening to us in the background. When your company underwrites with WRUU, you're getting their attention, and you're also supporting Savannah's only community radio station. It's an act of both self-interest and community spirit. Connect your brand with WRUU's passion and hyper-local focus by choosing an underwriting package that fits your company's budget. Email underwriting@wruu.org for more information. Thank you.
This portion of WRUU's programming is brought to you by listeners like you and by the 2021-2022 American Traditions Vocal Collection series of concerts and by the 2022 American Traditions Vocal Competition. The 2022 competition rounds of the American Traditions Vocal Competition and performances run from February 21st to February 25th. Performances by past ATC medalists and judges will be intermixed with quarterfinal, semifinal, and final rounds of the vocal competition. More information about the American Traditions Vocal Competition and tickets can be found at www.atcsavannah.org. Beginning on November 17th and running through mid-January, Location Gallery at the corner of Liberty and Bull Streets is holding a 300 and under sale, with an emphasis on holiday shopping. All purchases during this period will benefit WRUU. Gallery hours are 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. weekdays and 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Saturdays. You can also find and shop at Location Gallery online at www.locationgallery.net. Welcome back to Evening Eclectic. I'm your host, Dave Lake. Tonight on Evening Eclectic, I am chatting with Abe Partridge. The first time I met Abe, it's got to be over 4 years ago now, when he was touring around the Southeast and made a stop here in Savannah and on Tybee Island at the Tybee Post Theater. And finally, we're back together after all these years to talk about his new album, the live concert album from several clubs in England called Live in the UK, Agony is All Right. Out of Alabama.
Well, this is probably the prettiest place I ever played music in. This is a song I wrote called the Out of Alabama Blues. I hope you like it. Well, she sparkled like a rhinestone in an old country singer's coat. Underneath them neon bar lights that was tinted with cigarette smoke. And she was sipping on this top shelf whiskey and slowly tapping her feet to the song my band was playing, to a slow and bluesy beat. And I was leaning back on the kick drum or the worn out Gibson, in my hand, and I was playing them country blues just as sad as a white boy can. And she sounded like a hallelujah when she said, boy, do y'all take requests? And then she whispered soft into my ear, and this is what she said. She said, I know you're trying hard, but you're gonna have to do much better, 'cause the blues ain't gonna get you out of Alabama. And last night your band, it was hot, and tonight they're even better. But the blues ain't gonna get you out of Alabama. And so I took that guitar from off my neck and said, boys, y'all finish the set. And then I rolled the dice and asked that girl if she had the time to dance. I said, oh, what brought you to a place like this? She said, I'm just passing through town. As we twirled around in them neons on this whiskey carousel. To tell her just how I felt, but I was scared about the way it would sound. And I could tell by the way that she looked at me that she knew my kind too well. I said, oh baby, I'll leave these blues behind and I'll lay this guitar down, and together we can leave this smoky bar, so shitty town. She said, I know you're trying hard, but you're gonna have to do much better, 'cause the blues ain't gonna get you out of Alabama. And last night your band, it was hot, and tonight they're even better. But the blues ain't gonna get you out of Alabama. Now there she goes out the door. Yes, there she goes out the door. Now I can't sing the blues like I never sang them before. Yes, there she goes out the door.
That, I believe, is from the Cotton Fields and Blood
Yeah.
for Days album.
It sure was.
It's Americana, but I would think that would also resonate with everyone.
Yeah. What it is at its core is a missed love encounter. But, you know, deeper than that, it's just how hard it is to get out of a place like where I've been making art for, you know, the last few years. And that song was born when I had won this blues competition, which I'm not a blues artist. I'd never claimed to be a blues artist. Matter of fact, I would object to that classification every time. But I was asked to participate in a blues competition a number of years ago, and I did. And somehow I ended up winning the damn thing. Well, they sent me up to Memphis, and I competed in what they called the International Blues Challenge, where I horribly failed, as I should have, because, I'm a songwriter. I'm not blues. I mean, I love the blues. I love the Delta blues. Son House was one of my biggest influences, him being a Baptist preacher and going to a bluesman. I mean, I've always loved Son House, Skip James, all those great blues artists, but I never thought that I fit in that kind of category. But anyway, it's just like a description of missing out on a love encounter, but also finding something deeper, is that you're missing out on so much more that's happening outside of your place of familiarity. I feel like a lot of people are stuck like that.
Tonight on Evening Eclectic, I am chatting with Abe Partridge. You contend that you're not a blues man. There's so much blues in your music, and there's sort of the core. I can see why you could win a blues competition, because at the core, there's really is the blues.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, life is the blues. My life has been the blues. Now there's triumph in there at places, and there's beautiful moments at places. But yeah, I mean, there was a period in my life, I'm talking about from maybe 23 years old to about 25, where all I listened to was Delta blues music and like the Lomax recordings and stuff. I mean, I was a preacher back then, and I had an aversion that was placed on me by the religious structure that I belonged to, where I couldn't listen to rock and roll music that I had grown up on, or I couldn't listen to any popular music. But I found solace in the old bluesmen. Like I said, for years, that was all I did. Taught myself to play like Son House. I can open tune a guitar and play with a slide. I don't ever do that. I can do it, but it goes back to that thing about authenticity. I could play like I was Son House, but I want to play like I'm Abe Partridge. The blues are definitely influential in everything that I've created. And a lot of the stories in my songs they're blues stories.
And even early on, from your first album, you were preaching the blues.
This is a song I wrote about rock and roll music and fundamentalist Christianity all living in the same brain at the same time. It's called Preaching the Blues. I hope you like it. Well, I know Elvis is the king of rock and roll, and Jesus Christ could save my soul. But no one ever taught me how to pray, so I ain't nothing but a hound dog another day. And I cried the day that Kurt Cobain died. You know, he played the soundtrack to my teenage highs. And I wonder if he found peace by and by. Oh, well, whatever, never mind. And stained glass could always soothe my soul, but God don't like rock and roll. Janis Joplin had my heart since I was 15. And she could summon down the angels when she sang. And God knows how I've been trying to change, but something's got hold of me like a ball and chain. And Bob Dylan was something like an old-time prophet, and my heart's all questions, now I just can't stop it. Or maybe my head needs some rearranging. Or what can I say? I guess some times are a-changing. And the Delta blues are the hardest to play, but I could sing you a hymn like I was dying today. And I've grown so tired of trying to repent. And when Son House played the blues, he played them in a trance. And so there ain't but one thing left for me to do. I'm gonna join Son House and go to preaching the blues. I'll join Son House and go to preaching the blues.
Well, yeah, preaching the blues. Yes, sir. Okay, well, here you go. You want to know the blues influence of my music? I almost called that song Abe Partridge's Preaching the Blues, because that song, I'm ripping off the song title from Son House. I found Son House when I was 24. I lived at that time in Northwest Georgia, and I was driving to Chattanooga for the day with my wife. I pulled into a flea market. At this flea market, I find a VHS tape. It's called Legends of the Country Blues. And it has this guy named Son House, which I never heard of him, but it was like $1. And I was like, I'm going to buy this VHS tape. Well, I took it home, and it was Son House, like a 30-minute show that he did. I think he only played 2 or 3 songs in the 30 minutes, and the rest he just talked. And he talked about coming from a preacher to this blues. He talked about the process. Now, I'm in the middle of my staunchest independent fundamental Baptist ministry, and I became mesmerized with his songs because when he played, it was just so visceral. And you could feel it in your gut, and you knew that everything that came out of that man's mouth was the truth. You felt it in your soul. And I connected with it on such an incredibly deep level. I almost wore out that VHS. I mean, I had nearly the entire performance memorized at one time because I had watched it so many times. Like people memorize lines in movies, I could think about what he would say. The Death Letter Blues was his most famous song, but then there was a B-side that was called Preaching the Blues. And the first line was, I'm going to get me religion. I'm going to join the Baptist church. I'm going to be a Baptist preacher so I won't have to work. That song resonated in my heart, man. Realistically, me and Son House have very little in common other than the fact that we were Baptist preachers who went on to pursue the blues in some form or another. But I wrote that song as kind of like a tribute to Son House. And in fact, the last verse in that song mentions him by name. I've grown so tired of trying to repent. And when Son House played the blues, he played them in a trance. So there ain't but one thing left for me to do. I'll join Son House and go to preaching the blues. That was the whole message of his song, was he was leaving the ministry and he was going to begin to preach, but he was going to start preaching the blues. I thought it was such an interesting way to connect his ministry with the blues and how he married them together when, in his day and time, I mean, that would have been the high mark of apostasy. People have become a lot more lax nowadays, but in Son House's day, going from a preacher to a blues man would just be akin to joining up with Satan himself. But, he followed his heart there and he did it. And he wrote this incredible song. Those two things juxtaposed with one another just made this incredible impact on me at a point in my life. That's where that song came from.
Well, I think there is a closer relationship between your music and the music of Son House, because when people listen to your music, you are revealing your soul, and people know it is from your soul.
Thank you, Dave. Yeah, I mean, if you got that from it, brother, that's exactly what I intended. So thank you for saying that.
Tonight on Evening Eclectic, I am chatting with Abe Partridge. One last song, and this again is from Cotton Fields and Blood for Days album. But well, in this case, it's Abe Partridge goes into international politics. And
oh yeah, I know what you're talking about now.
And that song is Our Babies Will Never Grow Up to Be Astronauts.
Well, our babies will never grow up to be astronauts, and there ain't no reason to care, 'cause we've got everything figured out on this earth. There's no war, no disease, there's no despair. So eat, drink, and be merry, but don't think a lot, 'cause our babies will never grow up to be astronauts. And our babies will never grow up to be astronauts. They'll never make it beyond the clouds. They'll never ride on the grandest of deep spacecraft, a rocket powered, but we're nailed to the ground. And there ain't nothing up there but dust and rocks. And our babies will never grow up to be astronauts. And our babies will never grow up to be astronauts. And there ain't no reason to fear when the Chinese and the Russians are walking on Mars. We can just watch from down here. You see, their political systems are so inferior to ours, but our babies will never grow up to be astronauts.
Yeah, I mean, that song kind of says it all. It puts it all on the bottom shelf.
What was the inspiration of that song?
Well, there was a time a few years back, I was in the Air Force, and one of the big news stories was that the government decided to defund NASA. This was several years back. That was the beginnings of why I wrote that song. it's one of those, it's another one of those songs that talks about hard to digest things in a lighthearted way. It kind of sneaks in something heavy in a comedy kind of setting,
Tonight on Evening Eclectic, we've been chatting with Abe Partridge. As I mentioned, I've known Abe for several years now, both in terms of his albums as well as terms of his live performances. And it's always great to talk with Abe once I get a chance. And I'm so thankful that this new album has come out and we've had a chance to talk about this new album. And the new album is a live concert recording from several club stops in England. And that is Live in the UK, Agony is All Right. And I want to thank you so much. This has been such a blast for coming on the show tonight.
Man, you're a wonderful interviewer, brother. Thank you so much for being so well versed. And because, man, I do a lot of interviews, brother, and not everybody does that. A lot of people, they just ask me those 5 questions that I get asked by everybody, those 1, 2, 3, I can already know what they're going to ask, but thank you for throwing me some stuff that I had no idea was coming, man. You did good. I really appreciate you. Thank you, Dave. I had a wonderful time chatting with you.
We have a few minutes left, so let's finish with Abe Partridge, I Wish I Was a Punk Rocker, and this is from his Cotton Fields and Blood for Days album.
Put on my black steel toes and my tweed jacket from Goodwill. I'm gonna get me some black sunglasses just like Dylan used to wear. I'm gonna go to my barber and tell him, won't you do me up the wildest of hair? And as I sit there, I'll look in the mirror and I'll work on my scary stare. 'Cause I wish I was a punk rocker. 'Cause it seems like the right thing to do. Yeah, I wish I was a punk rocker. 'Cause it seems like the right thing to do. Rock stars, they get all the ladies, the best drugs and the top shelf booze, but they play just exactly whatever them big record labels choose. Stuff that rock stars do, but a punk rocker will tell you the truth, 'cause he's got nothing to lose. And I wish I was a punk rocker, 'cause it seems like the right thing to do. I was a punk rocker, 'cause it seemed like the right thing to do. So if you are your parents let down, if you're a big joke at your school, if you ain't into anything them other kids think is cool, if you're angry and a bit depressed and you ain't worried about being a star, just scream it like your heart's on fire and beat a guitar. dark.